Now, the greatest radio shows of all time.
Suspense.
The Shadow Node.
Washington calling David Harding, counter-spy.
Classic radio theater.
The Great Gildersleeve.
Fibber McGee and Molly.
Dragnet. Gunsmoke.
The Lone Ranger.
Now, step back into a time machine with your host, Wyatt Cox.
Good evening, friends of the Inner Sanctum.
Western adventure on this Sunday with an episode of Frontier Town starring Jeff Chandler from 69 years ago, December 26, 1952, The Guns of Wrath. And we thank you for tuning in on this Sunday, the day after Christmas, 26th day of December. This is the 360th day of the year, and by reasonable math, that means there's only 5 days remaining. British defeated in the Battle of Trenton on this date in 1776. The Erie Canal opened in 1825. Marie and Pierre Curie announced the isolation of radium in 1898. Jack Johnston became the first African-American heavyweight boxing champion in 1908 by defeating Tommy Burns in Sydney, Australia. The Nissan Motor Company organized on this date in Tokyo in 1933. FM radio patented also in 1933. The play The Glass Menagerie by Tennessee Williams first performed. The Flamingo Hotel opened in Las Vegas. It is still quite the fascinating place to visit. Barbra Streisand's final performance as Fanny Brice in Funny Girl on Broadway in this date in 1965. Streisand had the lead in the show since the show opened in 1964. Her role went to the underrated comedian Mimi Hines until the show closed in 1967 after 1,348 performances. Airing on this date on BBC TV in 1967, The Beatles' Magical Mystery Tour. The movie would be released in the U.S. in 1974. Time Magazine's Man of the Year on this date in 1982, awarded to The Personal Computer. The first long-running American television soap opera, Search for Tomorrow, aired its final episode on this date in 1986 after 35 years on the air. Iraq announcing its intention to fire upon U.S. and British warplanes that patrolled the northern and southern no-fly zones in 1998. Severe weather in France killed over 100 people in 1999 and caused extensive damage to property and trees and the French national power grid. In 2004, an earthquake measuring 9.3 on the Richter scale created a tsunami, causing devastation in Sri Lanka, India, Indonesia, Thailand, Malaysia, the Maldives, and many other areas around the rim of the Indian Ocean.
Suddenly I heard a noise, I didn't know what kind of noise, and then suddenly the water came in the door. And within 2 minutes it was up to my breast.
People started running for their lives. There was a lot of people screaming, carrying their children, their belongings with them. It's very noisy, and it's just a continuous roaring sound that gets louder and louder as it approached the beach. Over 300,000 people did not survive that earthquake and tsunami. And it was on this date 6 years ago today. The North American Storm Complex tornado outbreak in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. The most notable tornadoes in EF 2, 3, and 4. About a dozen people died due to various reasons, 10 of which due to the EF 4. That did substantial damage to the suburb of Rowlett. Passing away on this date in history, President Harry Truman, comedian Jack Benny, actress Elsa Manchester, child beauty queen JonBenet Ramsey, musician Curtis Mayfield, actor Jason Robards, President Gerald Ford, singer-songwriter Tina Marie, and a man, John Huber, better known to WWE fans as Luke Harper and to AEW fans as Brody Lee. Idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis, a rare condition which caused lung tissue to become irreversibly thickened and stiff. They discovered it far too late. It would have required a lung transplant. Huber died before they could do that, at the age of just 41.
This is the birth date of Chinese leader Mao Zedong, actor, comedian, composer, author, man of all trades Steve Allen, the first host of The Tonight Show, Big Bird and Oscars puppeteer Carol Spinney, who passed away in 2019 at the age of 85, comedian actor Alan King, actor Richard Widmark, and music producer Phil Spector, who passed away earlier this year at the age of 81. The last surviving member of the Four Tops, still performing, Duke Fakir, 86 years old. America's Most Wanted's John Walsh is 76. Candy Crowley, CNN, 73 years old. Metallica's Lars Ulrich, 58, who still doesn't want you to share any music, don't you know? Jared Leto, he was the Joker in Suicide Squad. And with 30 Seconds to Mars, the music group, Jared Leto is 50 years old. Singer Chris Daughtry is 42. From Two Broke Girls, Beth Bears is 36. Jon Snow in Game of Thrones, Kit Harington, 35. And from the middle, Eden Scher is 30. Those some of the people who celebrate the 26th day of December as their birthday. And if this is your birthday...
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, happy birthday. Happy birthday to you.
From 69 years ago, December 26, 1952, Jeff Chandler in Frontier Town on this Sunday, Classic Radio Theater.
Here's a great thing to consider doing right now before the end of the year. Call Medishare and find out just how much you would save by switching to Medishare, the affordable alternative to health insurance. When you call, you'll get some good news and probably be very happily surprised, too. The typical family saves $500 a month, but you might save even more. It's so worth it to at least find out. And you'll see why more than 400,000 people are already members. Medishare is a Christian community that's shared more than $4 billion in each other's healthcare costs. It really is remarkable, and they're very easy to talk to. And here's the thing. If you join before the end of the year, they'll waive your new member fee. That's another $170 you'll save. I'll give you the number here in a second. The call, and you'll get a price within 2 minutes. And again, the deadline is December 31st, so call now. You'll save even more. Call 833-34-BIBLE. That's 833-34-BIBLE. 833-34-BIBLE.
Classic Radio Theater on your favorite station. We're going to go back to December 26, 1952, an episode of the Bruce Ellis production Frontier Town. For some reason, Bruce Ellis on any of the shows he did was just really, really odd in how he did or didn't credit people. Why he would not credit Jeff Chandler as Jeff Chandler in this show, instead calling him Tex Chandler, we'll never know. But he did. So let's jump into this Western episode. Wade Crosby, such a delight, doing a W.C. Fields impression, such as it was, as Cherokee. So let's listen to this episode of Frontier Town. 69 years ago, December 26, 1952.
Frontier Town, the saga of the Roaring West. Frontier Town. El Paso, Cheyenne, Calgary, Tombstone. Frontier Town. Here is the adventurous story of the early West, the tamed and the untamed. From the Pecos to Powder River, Dodge City to Poker Flat. These are the towns they fought to live in and lived to fight for. Teeming crucibles of pioneer freedom. Frontier Town!
You know, down in Dos Rios, that's the little frontier town I come from and where I'm the only lawyer. The law business certainly takes many a peculiar turn. Folks seem to come to a Cowtown lawyer like Chad Remington, that's me, for almost any kind of advice, and for help in almost any kind of trouble. And trouble, believe me, we have aplenty out on the roaring, roistering frontier. Of course, a lot of our troubles aren't brought to me, they just happen. Like the trouble we had just a few weeks ago. Mister, that was bad trouble. Real bad trouble. Cherokee O'Bannon, the ex-medicine man who runs the Dos Rios livery stable, now that he's reformed, somewhat, had gone with me to the judge's for supper. To Cherokee, the principal attraction was the supper. For me, it was the judge's daughter, Libby. Well, we were finishing off one of Libby's lemon sponge pies when...
Is something wrong, Cherokee?
Now, come on, Cherokee. There is something wrong. You're staring at your cup as if you'd never seen coffee before.
Oh, come on, O'Bannon. The judge and Libby have caught you with your jaw down. What's wrong?
Well, to be perfectly honest with you, I was just reflecting on what a spot of brandy might do to enhance the flavor of this mocha and java.
Well, Cherokee, I haven't got any brandy, but I have got a bit of wine.
Wine? My dear Chad.
Chad, it sounds as if there's trouble down in town.
It sure does, Libby, and from the little I can see here through the window, I'd say someone's raiding the Wells Fargo office.
Wells Fargo? Libby, you stay here.
Cherokee, get the judge's rifle off the wall. Let's get going fast. By the time we got our horses back into town, a posse had already mounted up and was streaking out of Dos Rios, following the bandits who headed for the hills over the rickety wooden bridge across the White River. There was no moon, and under the somber awning of blackness, there was little to follow but the receding sound of the hoofbeats which led further and further up a gradually narrowing trail into the far rocky regions of the hills. By this time, we were sure we'd lost him, and the marshal called a halt to hold a council of war.
Well, Marshal, what do we do now?
I can't say right off, Judge. And I got a pretty good notion that the leader of that bunch was Ab Cleaver. He's been pulling raids not too far from here lately.
Well, even though I've heard this Cleaver gent is as smart as a rattlesnake backed into his hole, I think he's making a mistake this time.
What do you mean, Cherokee?
Marshal, I think Cherokee means they've ridden in a sort of a cul-de-sac, a bottleneck. Because except for Lars Peterson's ranch, there's nothing back up in those hills but rim rock that runs straight up, and the headwaters of the White River.
That's right.
Chad, I do believe you're right. Once they ride past Peterson's ranch, they literally have their backs to the wall, and we can starve them out.
Well, I'll be doggone. Derned if you're all not right. Mac, you take 4 men and crawl up to the rim behind them 2 creeks up there that flow into the river. All right. Half a dozen you other fellas go with my Chief Deputy Andy Thomas and form a half circle down here. The rest of us will go back to town, get some more ammunition and rifles. We'll be back up here by sunup to give you some relief and close in on them blasted crooks.
Watch it, Cherokee. Riding around this rim the way you're silhouetted, you make a perfect target if any of Cleveland's...
Belly blue blazes, Chad. That drilled a hole right through my Stetson.
Yeah, well, it proves one thing. We're not going to catch them napping. Can you see any of our boys around here?
Yeah, let me see now. Yes. Isn't that the Chief Deputy, Andy Thomas, squatting down behind that...
Come on, Mr. O'Bannon. Your hat's so full of holes now it's starting to look like a beehive.
And believe me, I'm no honey. Or am I? Get up there!
Oh, boy. Hold it. Oh. Yeah. Anything happen, Andy?
Nothing but that sniping. Can you see them down there? Nope. Just a puff of smoke when they throw a shot up here.
Well, the marshal said he'd be up with some lunch for you around noontime. But meantime, here are 2 extra rifles, 300 rounds of shells, and a spyglass the judge's father used at Gettysburg.
Thanks, Chad. And tell the marshal not to forget a plug of my chawing tobacco. Walled up here for gosh knows how... Chad, ain't you listening to me?
Oh, I'm sorry, Andy. I was looking down to where they've got Cleaver and his gang sewed up. Without ladders, they'll never be able to get up here, but they could move off to the east a few hundred yards and come up behind the Peterson place. If they did, with what supplies they could get from there, this siege might last for months.
I'd like to see them try it. Lars Peterson and Helga are about the 2 most stubborn Swedes I ever encountered. Wouldn't buy a bottle of my rattlesnake oil for 2 bits. Well, they'd fight Cleaver and his whole gang to a fairly well.
Just the same, I think the thing to do is to go back to town and call a little strategy meeting. What we've got to do is figure every possible move Cleaver might make and have some counter tactics ready.
Well, can't lose nothing by getting your heads together.
Just a few heads. There isn't a person in this entire valley who has the time to spare 2 months until Cleaver's starved out, if he does manage to get some supplies.
Confound that nefarious, no-good nitwit. When I get back to town, I'm going to write Mr. Stetson a letter. What we need out here is a hat that's bulletproof.
Not only did we need hats that were bulletproof, but we found we needed a lot of help. Cleaver wasn't just shrewd as a catamount. He was a man who was willing to take a chance. However, as we had figured it out, Cleaver had made a mistake. Apparently, when he laid his plans for the Wells Fargo raid, he'd counted on crossing the river and getting away. But instead of crossing the Red River, which had meadowland on its opposite bank, he crossed the White. Found himself with his back to the rocks on one side and the headwaters on the other. That was about the only joyful note I could sound in the whole meeting which the judge and the marshal called for early that evening.
Friends, won't you please quiet down? As much as we want your help and ideas, we can't hear anything if you all try talking at the same time. All right, Chad, would you go on with what you were saying?
Well, there's not much more, Judge. I just think with no moon tonight, it'd be a good idea if we could sneak about a dozen men up to Lars Peterson's place, just in case Cleaver gets the same idea that I got.
Hey, that's a good idea.
I think it's a good idea. And just to start the ball a-rolling, I'll volunteer to be one of those men myself.
The way the canyon lies, if Cleaver ever gets wise, he can pick us off one by one, and we'll never get anybody to Peterson's. What's more, if we do get men up to Peterson's, what happens if they try to break out some other way?
Please, folks. Not all at once. After all, the marshal's in charge. What do you think, Marshal?
Well, if we could get some of our men into Peterson's, it'd certainly stop Cleaver from...
Oh, Marshal, wait a minute. Look who just came in. Helga Peterson.
It's good you're all here for the meeting because I come here with bad news.
Bad news, Helga?
Blazing blue blisters. Bad news? Now what?
Oh, come on, Helga. You better come up here on the platform so we can all hear you.
Oh, this is the most awful thing. Nothing so bad ever happened to me, never.
Yes, but what is it, Helga? What happened?
Those bad men, those crooks, they break into our house.
Oh, no.
Friends, sidewinders, now we are in for it.
Oh, what happened to your husband? What happened to Lars?
Lars fight. He fight all he could. He fight like wild man, but those outlaws beat him on the head and take him prisoner.
How does it happen you got away, Olga?
He didn't get away. They let me go and tell me to come down here and give you a message, and by jumping Yemen is the worst job I ever had to do. And that crook, Abe Cleaver, he say, unless you get him and his men out of Canyon and ride away, they dam up headwaters of White River, and then blow up them and flood out whole town.
Oh, now, don't go getting excited. They can't flood the town. It's impossible.
I'm afraid it's not impossible, Marshal.
Well,
where they're located, they could dam up that water in no time.
Already they got men damming the water.
And with the water dammed up, even a child could divert it and let it come roaring down on the town.
It's that what I say do it. Let them crooks loose.
You can't be serious.
I can't I? You think we're going to lose our ranches and our stores and everything we own just to catch some sidewinding crooks who haven't done us any harm?
That's right now. Folks, friends, are you a lot of sheep? Are you going to let a low-down, double-dyed common murderer stampede you into cowardice?
Why, and take it from a man who knows. If you accede to this nefarious demand, you'll never be able to live with yourselves. For shame!
Yeah, I should say the same.
Neighbors, maybe I haven't always been right, but I think everyone here will grant that I've never consciously worked against the interest of my friends and my town.
What are you doing, Chad? Running for congressman?
This is no matter for laughing. This is serious. And even though Abe Cleaver is holding me their husband, is what you call it?
As hostage?
Yeah, hostage. I tell you, we must not do what Crooks said. We must fight. We must fight back.
I say keep Helga here to start with. No sense sending her back to suffer along with Lars. When Helga doesn't come back, that'll be Cleaver's answer. By the time he realizes that is his answer, we ought to be able to figure something out.
And come ebb tide or high water, we'll fight for this valley like men. Not like the yellow-spined cowards those owl hoots really are.
We'll return to the second act of Guns of Wrath, our exciting frontier town adventure, in just a few moments.
We don't know a lot about Wade Crosby, who played Cherokee in this episode, in Frontier Town. All we know is that he was born in Cedar Rapids, Iowa in 1905. He died in 1975 in Newport Beach, California of a grand mal seizure. He did work in the 1973 motion pictures Westworld, 1951's Tales of Robin Hood, and 1949's Rose of the Yukon. Jeff Chandler we know an awful lot about, most particularly his role in Our Miss Brooks, starring Eve Arden. He was the love interest in that episode. And, of course, all the motion pictures he did. He portrayed Cochise in the 1950s Broken Arrow. He was nominated for an Oscar. Frontier Town, December 26, 1952 on Classic Radio Theater. We'll take a short break for your favorite radio station. We'll return with the news from December 26, 1952 and the conclusion of Frontier Town, and we'll find out, does she return safely? We'll see.
America's founders knew power corrupts, and ultimate power corrupts ultimately, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. That's why they built in checks and balances to prevent any one group from seizing all power.
And that's why our president is elected by a college of electors to protect the rights of little states like Delaware and Wyoming against giants like New York and California. After all, our country is a republic, the United States of America, not the United State. Our states are independent sovereign powers who created the federal government, not the other way around.
And that's why all power ultimately lies in we the people and the states, not a central dictatorship of cronies. Did you know that? Thank God for the U.S. Constitution.
Find out more how our amazing Constitution and Bill of Rights protect us, the citizens, against power-crazed politicians in Washington. Help us take back America. Go to ouramericanrights.com. Brought to you by the American Media Council.
And you're listening to Classic Radio Theater on your favorite station. Jeff Chandler in Frontier Town, program from December 26, 1952. In the newspapers of that Friday, 69 years ago, these were some of the headlines. An apparent willingness of Soviet Premier Joseph Stalin to meet with President-elect Eisenhower on ways of easing world tensions aroused cautious skepticism in Western capitals yesterday. Soviet officials expressed hope, however, that the Russian leader may be sincere. Eisenhower himself withheld any immediate comment on the Generalissimo's statements. In London, diplomatic informants made it plain that Britain would like to sit in if any talks take place, thus raising the possibility of a Big Three meeting among Stalin, Eisenhower, and Prime Minister Winston Churchill. On Capitol Hill, warnings arose against letting this country become booby-trapped by a new Soviet propaganda device that might slow or weaken the nation's defense or weaken U.S. aid to the free countries of the world. William L. Ryan, AP's foreign news analyst, said Prime Minister Stalin's new statement on the Cold War does not seem at first glance to have advanced the cause of peace. What Stalin offers now is what he has offered before, peace on his own terms. And George Bartlett saying Joseph Stalin's answers to the questions submitted him are bland enough to justify further exploration. That from James Reston, New York Times reporter in New York. Reston, now vacationing at La Playa Apartments at Remington Beach, said the idea of submitting the questions to the Russian leader through the Soviet embassy was a simple reportorial act. The largest communist jet force seen in months swept far southward Christmas Day, possibly the little more than 4 miles of Seoul, but was chased back by U.S. Sabres. While none of this force of undisclosed size was knocked from the skies, the 5th Air Force said one MiG was destroyed, another possibly destroyed in fierce clashes high up in northwest Korea. General Eisenhower spent a homey Christmas yesterday with laughing kids and toys and treats, but crucial world questions intruded. As in millions of American homes, it was a merry tinsel bright turkey eating day in the Eisenhower household, but it brought new international problems for the president-elect to weigh. Soviet Premier Joseph Stalin publicized an offer to meet with him to try to ease world tensions, and when Eisenhower left his home, left his house for church services, reporters met him with the question, what did he think of the offer? Eisenhower paused and said, I can't say, I don't have anything to say on that this morning, I assure you. There was a little festivity at the White House yesterday as President Truman, still mourning a recent death in his family, observed his final Christmas as chief executive. Mr. Truman presided over a traditional turkey dinner in the early afternoon, but a White House spokesman said it was a very quiet affair. The Truman's Christmas marred by the loss of the president's mother-in-law, Mrs. David W. Wallace, who died 2 weeks ago at the age of 90. Holiday accidents killed more than 150 before the first 24 hours of the nation's extended Christmas weekend had expired. At 6 p.m. local time, the toll was 152 of these. 125 traffic accidents, 12 persons burned, and a variety of other types of accidents took the other 15. Christmas 1952, the granddaddy of them all, speaking dollar-wise, the government economist reported. Unofficial estimates set Christmas sales this year at a record more than $14 billion worth. Last year's December sales at retail stores totaled $13 billion. That also was a Christmas record. Congressman Emanuel Seller, the Democrat in New York, declared yesterday that the new McCarran immigration law is loosely written, permits the entry of fascists and Nazis to the U.S., and is a damaging obstacle to our marine transportation. He called for drastic amendments to the law. And in London, a housewife slammed the door on a man trying to sell logs. Well, the brass door handle fell off, and the log seller, 20-year-old Londoner Thomas Major, then walked off with the handle. Major was fined $8.50 for theft at a West London court, told the judge, the lady of the house was a bit rude, so I took her doorknob to teach her a lesson. And though some of the day's top news stories, as reported in the newspapers of Friday, December 26, 1952, on your radio, Frontier Town, starring Jeff Chandler, the conclusion of which we'll hear next on this Sunday Classic Radio Theater. So here's the choice. Some people say the USA is finished. It's evil, a has-been, full of hate and injustice. The U.S. Constitution should be trashed and the Bill of Rights abolished. No free speech, no gun ownership. Competition and free markets are bad. We're all too stupid. For our own good, the government must own everything and know all your secrets.
Other people say that America has created the freest, richest, happiest, most generous society that has ever existed in the world. That's why millions of people are desperate to come here and escape their brutal lives in Cuba, Venezuela, North Korea, and 100 other countries.
In America, we have the right to succeed, the right to our own living, the right to have a family, the right to believe in God, the right to have our own ideas, the right to be safe and secure, and the right to be left alone.
Where do you stand? Help us save the Constitution and restore the American dream. Go to SaveMyFreedom.com.
Brought to you by the American Media Council.
We'll start off our new week Monday with Classic Radio Theater, and the screaming coming from Boston is going to be hilarious because Jimmy's going to be happy to hear Marie Wilson with My Friend Irma. Irma gave up on Al and has herself a new boyfriend, Melvin, who's more interested in his job at an aircraft wind factory tunnel. That's coming up on Monday's Classic Radio Theater, but let's wrap up our Sunday show here with Jeff Chandler, Frontier Town, December 26, 1952, 69 years ago.
And now, Frontier Town.
Like I said before, this was trouble. Real trouble. And even though I did pull a politician's spellbinding trick assuring everyone that we'd fight back successfully, I honestly didn't think Ab Cleaver would do any more than dam up the water to frighten us. And that was because I didn't know Ab Cleaver. As I learned later from Lars Peterson, Cleaver didn't wait very long. Scarcely an hour after the time he figured Helga ought to be back with our word of acquiescence, Cleaver walked out to where his men were gathered around the Willowbrush Dam they'd built.
Well, Ab, the old lady get back?
No, we ain't gonna wait. I'm gonna show him that when Ab Cleaver says something, he means it.
It's okay with me, boss. Me and the boys already got the powder planted under the dam. All we gotta do is light the fuse, and 10 million gallons of water will come rushing down on Dos Rios like it was Judgment Day.
Well, what are you waiting for? You got matches, ain't you? Light the fuse.
You know something, Ab? This is gonna be more fun than the 4th of July. She's lit, boys. Now steady. All right, come on.
Mrs. Hunter, head for those rocks up there.
Don't head back toward town. Get upland, up toward the timber.
Bessie, give me the baby and follow me. Meet you up on Square Top.
Don't try to pass those other wagons. Keep in line. Give everybody a chance.
Yep, Ab Cleaver crossed me up, and Dos Rios was underwater. But the strange thing was, and we could see it from our vantage point up in the rocks of Crow's Nest, the town wasn't wiped out. Far from it. It was just as if the river had swollen in a flash spring flood, flowed over its banks, and covered the streets of the town with about 3 feet of silt-filled, muddy water. Now, the judge, Libby, Cherokee, and I pondered this. Tried to figure it out as we looked down on the sodden town.
Why, this is no worse than that spring flood we had when I was a little girl. Maybe not even as bad.
No question about it, Libby. And I, for one, can't make it out.
You think Cleaver figures that with only a few feet of water, we'll go back into town? And then he let the rest of it loose and really drown us?
Well, with a man like that, I suppose anything's possible.
Well, not this time. Because if he had wanted to drown us, he could have done it in the first place.
By George, you're right.
And what do you make of it, Chad?
I don't know exactly, Judge, but I'm sure there must have been some reason for it. Just trying to put myself in Ab Cleaver's place and figure out what he could possibly have had and... Doggone it, I think I got it.
Got it? Got what?
You see? See way down there, just kind of picking their way into town? You can just barely make them out. There's 8 horses, and I reckon they got 8 men on their backs.
I see them, Chad. But who are they? What do you think they're up to?
Well, unless I miss my guess.
And you missed plenty this trip.
Now, those men are Ab Cleaver and his gang. If they wanted to get away, they wouldn't be heading back again toward town. Is that right?
Yes. I guess so. But what do you...
I think they let loose a portion of that water to clear the town. And now that the town's cleared, they're going back in, completely unmolested, to help themselves to anything and everything they can find.
Of all the obnoxious, audacious, dastardly things. Here we are, way up here, and if we start down toward town, they'll be able to pick us off like flies. Common house flies, of course, not the horse fly, who is quite sagacious and wary.
Chad, can't we do something?
You bet we can. Now, look, we're up here on the high ground just as they were, except that we're up on the headwaters of the Red River.
Yes.
So what's to stop us from pulling the same trick they pulled and threatening to let the whole Red River down on them unless they give up?
After the unfortunate advice you gave everybody, Chad, already, do you think that you have any influence left with them?
Well, maybe not, but I never yet ruled a man off for trying. So what do you say? Let's get down off these rocks and over to the mesa where the rest of the folks are gathered.
Doggone it, Chad. 2 wrongs don't make a right. And if we dammed up the Red River, we might finish Dos Rios for fair.
By George, that's what I say. Enough is enough. Let them crooks get away. Let's get back to our home. That's what I say.
But you can't. You can't quit when you've gone this far. Now look, don't you see? If you men'll get back up in the hills and start building the dam, I can circle down with the marshal and a posse and we'll have them cut off.
I don't think so.
Caught between the flood, we can let loose on them. And enough lead to make a lot of them look like lace curtains.
It's just a trick, a trap. Chad just wants to threaten them. And if Cleaver won't give up and you don't want to let the water down on him, you don't have to.
Folks, this time, Chad's right.
I'm blamed if I don't think so. If you folks are willing to help, me and my men will risk our lives. Won't we, boys?
What do you look at me for, Marshal?
Well, if we ride, you'll ride with us, won't you, Cherokee?
Well, when you put it that way, Chad, yes.
And what about the rest of you?
All right, then. Let's knock on these horses.
Rein up, men. This is as far as we go.
Chad, I'll be blamed. You were right. See? Those men are ransacking the stores and loading everything they can onto their horses.
Well, how are you going to powwow with Cleaver from here?
You just watch, Cherokee.
Hey, Cleaver! Cleaver, can you hear us? Yeah, we're up here over your heads. To the east, up by the Quakies. He sees you, Chad. See? They're looking up here. Uh-huh. Cleaver! You've ridden yourself into a trap by coming back into Dos Rios. I'm here with the marshal and a 20-man posse. The rest of the town is back up in the hills. They're all set to let the Red River roar down behind you. Now, if you got any brains at all, you'll quit.
This is the marshal, Cleaver, and we're giving you just 1 minute to make up your mind.
Well, I'll be hanged. I'll take that back. I'll be blamed. You see them? They've all got their heads together, talking it over.
Chad, I believe this is going to work.
It looks like they've made their minds up. Cleaver, tell your men to throw your guns into the street. We're coming down. All right, boys, let's get going.
Well, we sure were feeling good. Me in particular, as we threaded our way through the aspens, came out in the lane on the back of High Baxter's ranch, and headed through the water and mud into town. A few seconds after the marshal told the boys to spread out,
Split up, boys! Cover both ends of the street!
Cherokee suddenly nudged me and pointed to something.
Chad, isn't that someone trying to get away through the alley?
You're doggone right it is, and if I'm not mistaken, it's Ab Cleaver. Come on, Cherokee. I'm sure gonna need your help.
Cleaver, the farther you run now, the farther you're gonna bounce later when I drag you back to town. Oh, so that's the way you want to play, huh?
Ted, you're wearing your gun. What's the matter with you? Perforate that perfidious poltroon.
Nothing doing, Cherokee. I got plans for that buzzard.
Look, he jumped off his horse and ran behind that piece of down timber.
Doggone it, this time we got him. Oh, boy, easy. Down, Cherokee, flatten. Now, look, you old fake. This time I'm going to trust my life to you, and you doggone well better be careful with it.
What do you mean? What are you going to do?
While you stay behind this rock and cover me, I'm going to belly crawl across this clearing, pull him out from behind that log, and beat his brains out. If he has any.
Ted, for goodness sake, be careful.
I'll be cautious. You be careful. Careful where you shoot, covering me. All right, now. Here goes. Makes 5.
Ted, look out!
And that makes 6. All right, Cleaver, your gun's empty, I reckon, and my fists are loaded. Now, come here.
Why, you loudmouth!
You won't be loudmouth. You're not going to even be able to talk.
Don't!
All right, Cherokee. I bruised my knuckles on this polecat's chin. You grab him and sling him over your horse. We're going back to town loaded with skunk.
Well, Miss Libby, after all that exertion, how about another piece of your lemon sponge pie?
Why, certainly, Cherokee. More coffee?
I guess Cherokee will take a second cup of coffee if you, if you give him something to, put in it.
Well, I still have that wine in the cupboard.
Well, now, Judge, I really...
No, wait just a minute. What kind of wine is it, Judge?
It's a very wonderful, rare old port.
I rather think...
Oh, Cherokee. Now, don't say you're going to turn down a libation. A little port wine?
Indeed, sir, I am not. Because with a man of my character, it's any port in a storm.
From 69 years ago, December 26, 1952, Frontier Town on Classic Radio Theater.
Mailman, mail today.
Got a nice email from Rich Graziano who tells us that he agrees with me, which is always nice to hear, but what he agrees with me about is something that some of you have expressed a little disagreement with. He says, you're absolutely right about Gunsmoke. I never liked the TV show, so when I started listening to Classic Radio Theater, I wouldn't listen to Gunsmoke. One day I did listen to an episode, and that hooked me. The radio series is so much better than the TV show. I enjoy the show. The actors bring the characters and episodes to life. And in closing, I want to wish you and yours a very Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. Thank you, Rich. And that's what radio is about. Not just the writing, but the way the characters bring the episodes to life. If you'd like to contact me, you can do it like Rich did. Go to my website, classicradio.stream. You can leave me a message there. You can also hear our shows on demand. Our shows are also available anywhere podcasts are served. Just search for USA Classic Radio Theater. Please thank this radio station, support the advertisers, and tell all your friends the great radio shows are right here at this spot on the dial. Classic Radio Theater on your favorite radio station.